to do that purpose.
Mayor Skoog,
Present.
Vice Mayor Nye, Councilmember Mallory,
Here.
Councilmember Anderson,
Here.
Councilmember Whiting,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
Here.
Councilmember Grossman.
I'm here too.
We have a quorum, Mayor.
Good, thank you. Okay, we go to discussion of proposed fiscal year 2015-16 budget for discussion only. We'll start at general overview. Larry and Bill.
Larry and Bill and the whole team you will see over the next 2 evenings. Mayor and Council, as you well know, this is another step in a very many-step process of adopting a budget that started way back in October or early November when we had our first retreat. And at that point in time, you gave us your ideas. You went ahead and told us what you wanted to see in the new fiscal year. And that was after a report from Bill Copey concerning revenues and what we may or may not have going forward. And those were very preliminary numbers. You will then recall we had a well-publicized public meeting where we invited the community to come in and share with us their ideas on what they wanted to see with the budget, included or excluded. And then, if you'll recall, we had a second budget retreat, and that was held in late January, where you heard from department heads and gave us very clear direction on what you wanted to see us do over the new year. We have now spent months compiling individual departments' requests and or desires moving forward. We pared all of those down to fit within the estimated revenues that we expect to see in the new fiscal year. This is a very critical next step where you will hear from the department heads after they have had their ideas and their budgets reviewed and pared down to go ahead and fit within the revenue that we have available. But I think as an overview, because Bill's going to get into the numbers, what I would like to say is this is a great time to be in Prescott Valley. Great time for the organization, great time for the people in Prescott Valley, because we have emerged from the depths of the recession. And it's really important that we continue to say exactly how we did that. And that is continuing to say the mantra of when times are good, prepare for the bad. And this mayor and council did exactly that. During the good times, we put away significant amounts of money in reserves to go ahead and deal with something like the recession that hit us. We surely understand and appreciate the macroeconomics of the United States and understanding fully good and well that we will have periods of very robust growth, but we will also have periods of decline. And we have just come out of that moment of decline. Now, that is a two-part saying. When times are good, prepare for the bad. But when times are bad, position yourself for the upcoming good times. How did the town do that? Number one, we refined our processes, make them more business-friendly, speed up a number of our processes so that businesses will succeed in our town. That's very important. The other thing we did was we took a look at our $120 million worth of debt that we had in 2007 when the recession hit us. And what did we do with that $120 million? Which, by the way, $120 million of debt for a community our size is actually on the low end of the debt that other communities carry. Very low end. So we've been very thrifty up to that point. Now, we took that $120 million during the recession and we refinanced it, we paid it off, and now we are sitting with only $68 million worth of debt. The per capita debt indebtedness of the people in this community is extremely low compared to other communities our size. And so, and that is keeping into account that we're a fast-growing community. We have many more needs than, say, an older community that's been around and didn't have to go build a wastewater treatment plant, didn't have to build a police station, didn't have to build a civic center and or a library. Okay, because older communities did that years ago and they paid off that debt years ago. We're a new community, and so yes, you are going to end up having debt. So with that in mind, we're going forward, bringing you a budget. You'll hear from all of the department heads, and we certainly, Bill, will go into the particulars of the revenue that we're anticipating. One note that needs to be thrown in, and we will get to that in the non-departmental budget, and that is we had anticipated, after trying to get the support of other cities and towns in the state of Arizona, to go forward and have the state legislature allow us to use Department of Economic Security numbers for a mid-decadal update for state revenue sharing. And when that went down in flames at the town or the League of Cities back in August, that proposal that we floated, we developed it, floated it, and we had some support, but it went down in flames because there were some communities feeling that they were not growing as fast and they would take a hit. Okay, so we and 8 or 9 other communities moved forward with having the U.S. Census Bureau do a census for us. We had anticipated, and you had decided, that it was important enough that we could pay off the cost of a new census with the proceeds from 1 year, and that would give us basically 4 years at $1 million a year because of our increased population. We went down that path. We wrote a check for $340,000 to the U.S. Census Bureau, and they began the process. We began the process. Then all of a sudden, the other cities and towns woke up and said, whoa, wait a minute. Prescott Valley's idea that was floated back in August is something that we should have done. And so, led by City of Phoenix and others, they are moving forward after several meetings to go ahead and expedite issue in front of the state legislature in January a bill that would allow the DES numbers for 2015 to serve as a mid-decadal census. In addition to that, they also are in agreement, and we're working on this, and we're working forward on it, and other communities are having the same discussion that we are now. They are in agreement that not only should we use the DES numbers for 2015, but as other states do, there be an annual look at the numbers and an annual recutting of the pie. So for a community like Prescott Valley, that's huge. Every year we would be able to update our numbers and get our share of revenue based on our growth, which based on our track history, we would be able to get increased state shared revenues as a result every year. Now, quite frankly, I'll have to share with you, this issue was brought up by a community that is losing population. And they want an annual update so that their budget is only hit a small amount every year, rather than waiting for the 5 or 10-year cliff, which really makes sense. So what I'm saying is that we're going to not have to spend what's in the non-departmental budget of over $400,000 on a census because we can use the DES numbers. Oh, and by the way, we already wrote a check for $340,000 to the Census Bureau. We have already put in a request to send our money back except what they have spent on us, and the other cities are agreeing to reimburse us for money that has already been spent because they recognize they sent us down a path we didn't need to go. And so I think that's a really good outcome for that. And so we will not need to dip into reserves in the amount of, the estimate was $750,000 to $800,000. Putting that in perspective, City of Phoenix, to cause that same census, their cost was going to be right around $24 million. And so you can understand why they didn't think it was a great idea. but they were just late realizing that the Prescott Valley resolution was terrific. But they realize that now. So with that, let me turn it over to Bill, and he can get down to the specifics.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. Before I start, I would like to thank all the department directors and their staff for all their hard work they put in this year in assembling the budget. All of them did a great job. I also have to thank Lee and Irina and Brandy, who work in my department, for helping me assemble this document, because without their help, you would not have this document in front of you, especially Lee. She's kind of the creative one in my department. She creates a separate cover for each of the binders. So there's 27 binders that she prepares every year, and each binder has well over 340 pages. So you can imagine the last couple weeks in my area, especially in her area, boy, you just don't even really want to talk to her because she's going to town to try to get this information done. So I would like to thank all of them for that. The other part is, so tonight I'm just going to kind of hit some of the highlights of the budget. This is actually the first time that I've been doing this now for 13 years that we put the PowerPoint presentation on our town website or as part of the minutes or the agenda, so people can actually go out and actually see what we're proposing before you. So this was actually the first time we've done this. And so going forward, I think it was helpful. I hope it was helpful. But so going forward, I'm probably going to start doing it every time. The other part I want to note is the budget book right now is a draft. So Larry is proposing to make one change already. We can make changes if council proposes other changes to be made. I'll record them, and then we will document them, and then we'll put them in the final budget book for when I come before you for the tentative budget. Okay. So just a very quick overview. Most of the next two nights, people are going to be talking about their budgets, which is basically their expenditure side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a few minutes just kind of hitting the highlights of basically the revenues. Where does the money come from to pay for all of these expenditures? Then I'm just going to hit an overview of the expenditures and then talk about general fund, HURF, and the enterprise funds. And the last thing is the tentative dates for basically approving the budget for next fiscal year. This slide right here shows TPT collections and this is the full 2.33. So you can see in 2007, that is our highest year of sales tax collection to date. That was a little over $14.6 million. Now, then you can see where the recession started coming in, downturn in the economy, our sales tax revenue collections started going down. And in the next 4 years, we lost over $4 million in sales tax revenues. And so that was a significant hit to our budget during those years. But you can start seeing in 2012, we started climbing out, and you can start seeing the growth in our TPT collections. Over those last 3 years of actual collections, we've averaged around 9% increase in sales tax collections on an annual basis. So for when I did the 14-15 budget, I projected an 8% increase in budget. Right now, total budget or total sales tax collection is exceeding 15% over the prior year. And I have a slide I'll show you, and it's predominantly retail. It was something that was never anticipated. So as a result, when you look at the budget for sales tax collections, it's going to be significantly lower than what we're actually going to collect. And part of it is my retail forecasting that I did. But if everything goes well, the way in 2015, we have 9 months worth of collections of data. Right now, I'm forecasting $15.5 million collection this year, which will surpass our highest year in 2007. And then based on top of that, I'm forecasting a 4.8% increase in next year's TPT collections. So that's kind of the history and how I'm arriving and creating my budget for sales tax collections. This slide right here just shows only construction. Basically, construction sales tax comes from when a new home is sold. So you can see in 2007, we had $4.5 million worth of sales tax collections coming in from sales of new homes. That represented almost 40% of our total TPT collections. And then you can just see what happens over the next few years. Right now, we're looking at around $1 million, $1.2 million is what our collections appear to be right now over the last couple of years. I haven't seen any change in our numbers lately, and so it's been fairly consistent from one year to the next. So right now, I'm only budgeting about $1.1 million for construction TPT collections next year.
Okay, and if I can, it's important to put this in perspective. If you will recall, back in 2007, we were permitting 100 to 120 homes per month. And then you take a look at 10 and 11, and we're talking new homes as opposed to commercial projects. In 10 and 11, we permitted like 5 a year. Okay, as opposed to in 2007, 100 to 110 per month. This month, as of today, we have permitted 50 homes for the month of April. So although we're seeing an increase and a good increase, we still are not experiencing the same robust economy that we saw in 2007 as it relates to new housing starts.
So just to give you a comparison, back in, like I said, 2007, 31% of our total collections, sales tax collections, came from construction. Right now, we're forecasting 6.5% of our total revenues. So we've made that transition from a one-time sales tax to basically revenues that come in on a regular basis every month, basically retail. So this is a retail slide. One thing, there's a couple of things I find, of course I'm probably the only one that find it interesting, but some of the things I find interesting is that even during the downturn in the economy, you can see the retail. There was not a lot of growth, but it still continued from 2008 all the way to 14. It still continued to grow. So that's really, really what kind of saved us through that downturn, was because of that steady growth. And like I said, it's a small increase. It's 2 or 3% each year. But again, it really was very helpful. Now, over the last 5 years, retail has an average increase of around 7%. So when I did in 2014-15 budget, I projected an 8% increase in retail. At this point, in the last month's report, we're at about 23% retail ahead of last year at this point. So it was something that I never projected, never anticipated to see that type of growth in retail at this point. So it's, you can see with all the new stores that have come in, you know, a lot of people are spending money in Prescott Valley based on the numbers we're seeing here. So going forward in 2016, I'm projecting a 6% increase in our retail sales category. So hopefully, again, if it's anything like my past history of calculating trends, it's going to be significantly more. So we'll see. State share revenues. Basically, all of this information comes from the state. There's no forecasting on our part. So I take the numbers from the state and basically I plug them into our budget book. If there's any revisions that occur during the process, I try to incorporate them into our budget. But you can see there's, from one year to the next, there's very, very little growth. We're averaging 2, 3, 4% increase typically year after year. Starting in 2012, we went down, but the one thing that will help or could help this tremendously is based on what Larry can get accomplished through the state about changing the population numbers. You know, if we are right now, you know, they're showing 39,000 for us. So any increase whatsoever will help us in this, in the state share revenues. So I'm hoping, anticipating in 2017 that hopefully we'll see some type of a adjustment occur in 2017. Huh?
Good, Paul.
Yeah. I'm not going to go there yet, but we'll see. So this one right here, this is total revenue. So in fiscal year 15-16, I'm budgeting revenues at $61,711,953, compared to $61,417 last year. So as you can see, from one year to the next, it's less than 0.5% increase. The thing that is kind of misleading is that if you look by fund, the changes are dramatic. The general fund, I'm looking at about a 9% increase in the general fund in total revenues. Special revenues, where the grants and that are, we're looking at a 15% decrease. And then in the capital improvements, I'm looking at a 13% increase there. So within each fund, you see a lot of changes, but as a total, basically we stayed almost balanced with last year. These are the main revenue categories for all funds. This would include enterprise funds. Again, the proposed budget is over on the far right. That's what it's incorporated into the budget book right now. The 14-15 budget, that's what was approved by council last year. That's not my projection. That's what was actually approved. And then you can see the 2 prior years of actuals. Now, the one line at the bottom, which I have a separate slide to discuss this, but the decrease in cash reserves. Right now, we are going to need, I'm projecting $14.3 million to balance our budget. So we are allowed, basically through budgeting, that whatever our revenues are, as long as you have reserves to cover it, you can use those reserves to cover your appropriations. So basically, there is a gap of $14.3 million between expenditures and revenues. I kind of talked already, I think I hit main points of the sales tax increase. License and permits, you can see there's an increase there, and that's due to the increase in the permit activity. So I went ahead and bumped our permitting revenues by $500,000 this year. Intergovernmental, again, that's primarily the money we get from the state or any money from Yavapai County for like the flood control, for the library, things like that are all included in intergovernmental. You can see overall there's just a very, very small increase there. Impact fees. Right now, based on what I'm seeing this current year, I reduced our budget because we're not coming close to even collecting the money that I budgeted this year. So basically, I reduced the budget next year, and that's where you can see why you see the decrease there in impact fees. And the other one is actually the same thing with utilities. There it's the connection charges. So the water resource, wastewater connection fees, water connection fees. I'm seeing the same type of trend there. So I'm budgeting less money next year in the connection fee category. So that's why you see that decrease in the utilities. Okay, so this is a change in fund balance. Now, based on Larry's comments, the general fund, we were $439,000 in the red. Well, I budgeted $440,000 for the census. So if we actually take the census out, we'll be actually in the black, not a lot of money, but in the black, $349. So I think that is probably, and I'll have to look back because someone asked me, and I go, this might be the first time that we were actually have a balanced budget without dipping into any type of surplus. So I feel that, this is a good indication for us at this point.
And it's probably important to note that not only will the budget that is presented to you be in the black, but the ending fund balance is going, when we get the refund from the revenue or from the Census Bureau and the city's contributions to pay for what has already been expended, that will increase our ending fund balance as well. So it's good on both ends of the equation.
Well, we want to talk about increasing ending fund balance. What's going to have more of an effect to our fund balance is by my under forecasting for sales tax.
And I wouldn't even argue that.
So there's going to be at least probably $1 million more, if not more than that. that we're going to see above what we budgeted for by the end of the year. So that's all that money that basically we didn't appropriate, we didn't spend it, so it's just going to go directly into our fund balance. Going with special revenues, the $2.6 million, that is basically a hit to cash. That will be, a lot of our impact fees are going to be used this year. Brian Woody will be talking about a project that they're going to do with the parks. We have a street project that's going to be using circulation impact fees. We're going to be buying 3 police cars for the 5 officers that are incorporated into this budget. So that's going to be also taken off out of the public safety DIFs. So the net is basically a $2.6 million hit to the total impact fees fund balance and cash balance too. The other little part of that would be the HURF. Right now we're showing around $230,000 basically out of balance in the HURF, so that's going to come out of HURF fund balance too. So those are the main components. Capital improvements, that one will also be a direct hit of basically the third of a cent that we've accumulated over the last 2-3 years. We have a lot of street projects, Viewpoint Drive, this roundabout here in front of the Civic Center, stuff like that. That's all being budgeted and appropriated in next fiscal year. So that is going to be directly taken out of the capital improvements cash reserves. Enterprise fund, that's the one that's a little bit misleading. That includes depreciation. There's about $5 million of depreciation. And I always try to avoid getting into the accounting terminology, but depreciation is a non-cash transaction. It hits assets, it hits an expenditure, but it doesn't affect cash. Now there is a $1.5 or $6 million sewer project that is included in here. That will definitely have an impact on cash. So that's what makes up the difference of why we're drawing $14.3 million from fund balance. Is there any questions? Okay, so now we'll do expenditures by fund. Proposed expenditure for this year for 2015-16, $76,058,793 is what the total budget being proposed is. Actually, the number is going to go down by at least $440,000 for the census. Compared to last year, it was $70,047,000 and some change. So basically, it's a little bit over 8.5% increase over last year. The general fund, which I do have a separate slide to show you the increased by 11.8% over the previous year. Special revenues, basically this increased by $300,000. So really, from one year to the next, in special revenues, it pretty much stayed balanced, it stayed level. Capital improvements increased by about $2 million. Primarily, that's we appropriated, we had money budgeted for some street projects this year that didn't get done. We're basically rolling those projects forward to next year and reappropriating them next year. Enterprise fund basically stayed pretty much level from one year to the next also. So here's the expenditure by categories for all funds. You can see the personnel, basically that's salaries and benefits. That increased by 11% or approximately $2 million. Now there's many reasons for the increase. We have 10 new positions being budgeted. That's incorporated into this. We have a 2% merit being budgeted, 2% COLA. We're increasing the non-public safety retirement for the employees from 12 to 14%. The other part is the public safety retirement system. Their contribution went from 18.4 or something to 23.55. Significant increase there. And a lot of that is due to there is, and I think everyone has kind of seen a lot of the articles in the newspaper, there is a very large unfunded liability in the public safety pension. Right now, ours is around $6.6 million of unfunded liabilities. So in order to basically kind of eliminate that large deficit, basically they're recommending a little bit higher rates than necessary in order to offset these, or to lower this unfunded liability. So originally it was supposed to be 19% is what they proposed, but they recommended that if you want to eliminate your deficit and your liability, or limit your liability, you need to increase it to 23.5. So that's what we did, and that's part of the reason that we're seeing this almost $2 million increase in personnel. Operating expenditures increased by about 11%. General fund went up by around $1 million. Again, I have a slide for that. I'll just go over some of the details there. Special revenue increased by $600,000 or so net in operating side, and most of that actually is in HURF, which I do have a slide for HURF too, and I'll show you where some of the changes are there. And enterprise just went up by about $300,000 over the previous year. Capital outlay, you can see, is about a $3 million increase over the previous year. So again, we're adding a lot more capital projects this year. Here's a number of authorized positions. You can see in 2009, that's the most. This is full-time equivalents. So in 2009, we had 262 positions, full-time equivalent positions. In 2012, with the downturn in the economy, we went to 205 full-time equivalent positions. Right now, with your approval of this year's budget, we're going to go up to 237. So from 2012 to 16, we're going to be adding 32 positions, or have added, and then there's going to be 10 positions this year. So we're not quite or nowhere near where we were in 2009, but again, we're starting to kind of go up in that upward trend a little bit. General fund, again, in this one right here, the percent change, I just want to clarify that basically is my proposed budget divided by the budget that was adopted by council last year. It's not the projections. So when you see a 14% increase in TPT, that's basically proposed, 15-16 proposed over 14-15 budget. Now for my forecasting, when I create my budget for 15-16, I use the column that says projections. That's what I'm using to build my revenues for next year. Again, so you can kind of see some of the changes. Again, even license and permits, I'm projecting almost a little over $2 million. I'm budgeting actually a little bit less. Yes, sir.
Bill, I have a question about the last slide. I'm sorry, I didn't get there fast enough for you.
Okay.
Couple of questions. One will be increasing, you said, from 2012 to 2016. I believe you said 32
Yes.
positions.
Yes.
And that'll bring us up to 237.
Correct.
I guess my question is this. What has the population increased? And this is probably for Larry. If he has an estimate of the population increase between 2012 and 2016, an estimate on that. The second part of that would be, what's an average, if there is such a thing, number of employees per capita?
Per 1,000. Okay, first question first. From 12 to this budget, you're looking at a population growth that's about 5%. And when we end up getting our new DES numbers, that percentage will even be higher than that. In terms of employees, just very specifically, this year's budget, if approved as presented, has 5 new police officers, which will take that department up to the same threshold when the recession hit. Okay, and so we are right at the same number of police officers, plus a half-time technician, and then you've got one in streets, one position in streets, one position in parks maintenance, one recreation coordinator, and a building inspector. So those are the positions that we are contemplating with your approval going ahead and funding. When you talk about how many employees per 1,000 is the standard, most cities use between 11 and 13 employees per 1,000. The town of Prescott Valley, and I'm talking full-time employees, not full-time equivalent, because when you use full-time equivalent, we've got a whole bunch of lifeguards and part-time employees that assist us in various departments. I'm talking full-time employees. Those full-time employees in the town of Prescott Valley equal about 4.5 or 5 employees per 1,000. Now let me repeat that again. Most cities use between 11 and 13. We use 5.
Okay. Thank you.
So here's revenues by category again for the general fund. Overall, the main increase obviously is going to be in sales tax is where we're seeing the main increase. Now fines and forfeitures, that number I am proposing a decrease. Last year we had a little bit of money in photo radar budget because I thought we were going to get some residual money coming in. It's been very little, so I eliminated that budget. And then in the court fines and collections, it's down a little bit, so I've actually reduced that number also. So that's why you see the decrease there in fines and forfeitures. Charges for services, there are a few categories that are now are going to meet our budget in the current fiscal year. So in those cases, I also reduced their budget. So there's 1 or 2 items in charges for services that actually I reduced, and that's what causes it to show a $47,000 decrease over the previous year. Other than that, let's see, there's really probably nothing else anything important. Here's the expenditures by category again. Personnel, Larry kind of just addressed a lot of the personnel changes. Operating expenditures, you can see that it's gone up by $1.2 million over the prior year budget. The primary reason for that is basically there's 2. I mean, when I did this budget, we included $440,000 for the census, so that caused part of the deficit. The other part is, as a result of our increased sales tax collections, a lot of those sales tax collections are in areas that have development agreements. So as a result, our development agreement contributions also have increased. So that's really the bulk of the increase in the operating expenditures are those 2 categories. That's around $900,000 combined between the 2 of those. So that accounts for the rest. And then a lot of the other directors that will come up here, they can talk about their operating expenditures and what effect that they see in their budget this year versus next year. Capital projects, there's a couple items here. Big one is basically we have another drainage project, $500,000 budgeted for drainage. We are also budgeting for new police cars. And these are going to be replacing the existing fleet. So we have $246,000 in capital budget for police cars to replace the existing fleet. And then we also have 3 in impact fees for new police officers. So there's a combined of, $350,000 or so, $360,000 budgeted for police cars combined for the police department. General fund, this is by department. Again, most of the staff will already be, department heads will be talking about their department. There are only 4. You can see there's 4 departments that are in double digits. Non-departmental, pretty much, and Larry can just talk about here shortly. But that one is basically where the 2 items of impact fees, reimbursement of development agreements and the census is budgeted. So that's the primary reason for that increase. Police, part of that is police officers, and then the cars. So, yes.
Bill, I just wanted to ask, when we talk about the cars, we just started replacing these cars, really. How long have we gone along prior to this using these same cars? It's been a while.
It's been, I don't remember the last
one. We've been picking up one here and there, but the fleet has, it's very true when we say the fleet is getting tired.
Well
And
used.
so this is going to help.
Thank you.
Parks and Rec, part of that is really the new staff that Larry has, that we've incorporated into the budget. And then the library, basically there's and I'm sure maybe Stuart will talk about this, but there's a repair that they would like to make, or that we have budgeted in the event that we have to make it incorporated into his budget. HURF, we have our revenues here are very limited in HURF. Basically, we get the money from the state. When I prepared this budget, the report I had received originally was 2.9 million. I've received a later report now that's, I think, 3.1. So if we end up making changes, I'll probably put the more revised number in for HURF revenue. So probably the next time you see the budget book in detail, you'll see probably 3.1 or 3.2 million dollars in there. But there's very little, other than the HURF revenues, the money from the general fund we transfer every year. Again, it's a highway users revenues over the last 10 years, 8 years of actual. It's the information that we receive from the state, so it's been very, pretty steady. It flows with how the economy is doing for the most part. The HURF revenues, again, the big increase is in operating. I'm sure Norm will talk about it tomorrow, I believe, is that basically we added more money for street maintenance in the budget this year. Right now it's showing a 16% decrease in budget. That's only because we had a $1.3 million transfer in this year's budget. If you eliminate that, it goes up to 23% increase. Again, the bulk of that is in the operations of increasing the street operations budget. Enterprise, user fees, basically monies we collect from our customers, water and sewer customers, $12.3 million. The one thing I'd want to point out is that this does not take into consideration any type of rate increase or anything like that may happen. Me and Mark will be coming back to you sometime in either late June or early July to give you the results. We're working on that right now, actually, to determine where we are in our rate study. So this does not reflect any increases in our user rates. Last year we were at 12.2, so this year I'm at 12.3. So again, very little increase. The one that did decrease was the connection charges. Last year I had $1.4 million budgeted. I lowered it to $990,000 this year. And other is this combination of penalties and other fees that we collect. Here's the budget overall. This is all of the enterprise funds. Neil and John will probably be talking tomorrow about this in more detail. Again, for a $21 million budget, overall it went up 4%. I thought that was a very modest increase, and so that was, there's really, I'm not even quite sure if we can really come up with any major changes that we made from one year to the next in the budget. And then here are the two dates. Based on, after tonight's meeting, we'll take all your comments and any potential changes into consideration. I'll revise the budget book. And then with your approval, I'll come back on May 21st with approval of the tentative budget. And then then a month later, the 25th, we'll have a public hearing and then approval of the budget.
Question, Laura?
I just want to go back to Councilman Anderson's question. And I want to make sure that our citizens understand that our employee ratio per 1,000 citizens is very different. We don't have a fire department. We don't have a trash department. We outsource many things. So I want to make sure our citizens understand they're covered.
Good. Any other comments? Thank you, Bill. Okay, if that's done, we'll go on then to council budget. Larry?
Okay, here we go with the budget presentations. If I could, let me get you to turn to page 6-3, and we'll look at the council budget. You'll notice that there has been a modest increase in this year's council budget, and that is attributable to the lion's share of it, the upgrade in the Granicus voting system, which includes the iPads and bringing the best technology going forward. That's a chunk of change. The other highlight, there's an increase in the League of Cities and Towns dues. That's $1,200, and we went ahead and increased the budget for the service flags that you'll see out on Highway 69 to both the American Legion and the VFW. And important to go ahead and point those out. But other than that, it's been a fairly flat budget for the mayor and town council. And do you have any questions on it?
Questions, anyone?
Okay, if not, then we would go to the executive management, which you'll find on page 6-7. Okay, and you'll see that we held the line very closely on on that entire budget. The highlights of that happens to be that we're looking to replace the Jeep that's up over 100,000 miles that council goes ahead and uses frequently, if not daily. That Jeep will end up being budgeted partially in utilities and partially in executive management, because they're buying essentially the existing Jeep, so it's being handed down to utilities, but they're contributing to the Jeep replacement. And in addition to that, the Citizens Academy, we're looking to go back to having 2 academies per year. And Ryan does have cost associated with that. In other words, we need to feed people that come to the academy. Otherwise, I don't think he'd get anybody to come. Not really. In addition to that, there's the volunteer banquet, which was just held last Wednesday. And it's a small thing to do, considering all of the work and effort that we get from volunteers in the town of Prescott Valley, and that is truly, truly appreciated. And so we're looking to continue and upgrade that, and we expect to see that grow. We're looking at, in Channel 9, replacing some obsolete equipment for the broadcasting, which if you're at home today, you might be watching on Channel 9. We need to upgrade that. That's going to cost about $8,000. And the big cost in executive management that has gone up is that the hearing officer division has moved up to executive management. It was a move that needed to be made, not because Richard's crew couldn't handle it, but it was more appropriate up in management as opposed to his department. I wish he was here because I could have dug him a little. There's going to be some work on the stage that is going to happen for Patriot Week with hopefully the Pop Symphony. I believe that's well underway right now. We're also looking at assisting in a YMCA feasibility study. We're looking to assist them with that. We're not looking to carry the full weight of that, but we're looking to assist the YMCA. As you know, and we talked about in the retreat, that is something that you have expressed an interest in seeing come into town, and we are looking to work with the Y on that. That is moving along. That seems to have a great deal of support to actually get one in Prescott Valley, and we're going to see what we can do to accommodate that. Under economic development within executive management, you've got an incentive for Volkswagen dealership, and then our final payment to YRMC. And if anybody ever wants to question why there are incentives for certain projects, here is a classic example. We did not have a hospital. We wanted a hospital in this community, and it wasn't going to come. Okay, we did what we could to help incentivize that. And so for how many years have we now enjoyed the benefit in our community of a 24-hour emergency room, of having a premier breast care center, and also having babies born in Prescott Valley? And part of that was because the town of Prescott Valley incentivized it. Oh, and have we gotten paid back? Certainly. You take a look at the high-paying jobs that has brought to the town of Prescott Valley, and don't tell me that incentives don't work. They do work. And we have a hospital and a growing medical care industry in our community as a result of the foresight of council to make something like that happen. Anything else on executive management?
Yeah, questions, anyone?
If not, then if you would indulge me and turn to non-departmental, which is page 6201. You will see that we are, this is where you will find our three-legged economic development stool, meaning our contributions and contract, quite frankly, with the Chamber of Commerce. And they put on a number of events for the town under contract. In addition to that, they handle our business retention and expansion element of economic development. You'll see that that line is being held for another year. The Prescott Valley Economic Development Foundation, the other leg of our three-legged stool, we're keeping that number the same as we have had during the recession. We're going to be renegotiating contract with them. As you will recall, we have thresholds in there to which they need to grow jobs in the community, and those benchmarks we intend to extend in a new contract with PVEDF. There was a fear by some that we would not be looking to fund PVEDF with GPREP coming online. Quite frankly, I think it's everybody's belief that it is critical for the town of Prescott Valley to have its own economic development arm, growing jobs, and working very closely with GPREP in the process. And so that you'll see that there, as well as the TIPS program, Prevent Child Abuse, and the Senior Center, which are longtime beneficiaries of the non-departmental budget. If you will look at item 101, 9500, 619, that's under professional services, you will see an item for $450,000. That is what I'm suggesting will go away. That is the census number. And
440.
Pardon?
440 of that census.
Okay. And so that will go away with a revised budget. That is, unless you want to get the Census Bureau to do it, but there's no reason. In addition to that, you'll see the $328,000 under professional services in this fiscal year. And Bill, I'm assuming that was the check that we wrote to the U.S. Census Bureau, and we had transferred those funds over. So you combine those two numbers, and that will be our savings by using the DES numbers, which will be enhanced. The work group that I've been with is an agreement amongst all of us that the DES numbers need to have a different format. And going ahead and taking into account utility meters, whether it's electric or whether it's water, or perhaps a combination of the two, will end up giving a much better estimate as to the population of a community. And all of the city managers are shaking their heads yes, saying this is what we need to do to make them more accurate. But other than that, you'll see there's a bunch of dollars in non-departmental. This is where Bill has put some of our transfers based on development agreements and sales tax reimbursements, making those development agreements whole. So with that, do you have any questions?
Any questions, anyone?
I do.
Laura?
Bill, you said 440 of that. What's the other 10,000? I couldn't hear him. Okay, thank you. Perfect. The zeros accounted for.
Okay. If there's no more discussion on that, we'll move on to the library, page 6-125. Stuart Mattson, Director. Stuart?
Mayor and council, as a tradition, you know, you get bribes, and Vanna Van Haren will hand them out. I spent on this particular purchase $1.82 for state and local taxes, so that is revenue that Bill has projected. I also want to acknowledge the trustees are here, two of them, and they are always part of the budget process. On the library budget, basically we took the 3%. As I talked to you a few weeks ago about the materials and some of the issues that we face with our operating budget, and mainly the toner situation, which our office supply line, has gone $4,000 or $5,000 over. And so I took the money, the 3%, and put it in the administration section of the library budget, which is on page 6126. And so we will decide as we go along what we could possibly use for materials, as I've always mentioned, but we may need to move that to different areas to cover shortages in the ongoing operating budget. As I mentioned, the office supplies, mainly the toner. We're looking at different options with the the toner. I was so hoping that there was a company out there somewhere that would come in and just take over the whole process, and that we have someone that's doing that right now for the copier and faxing. And so, but Casey did research, Casey Danner did research. I guess you put it out on, what do you call it, the library listserv? Yes, a listserv, and really never got any response. So I don't foresee that issue of the toner going away. And we just have a lot of printers and a lot of printing is being done. The other thing that the facilities division, which is the next page at 412 or 6128, with the work they've done in the, they've changed out a lot of the lighting to LED, and that has saved that electricity area quite a bit of funding. And in that, we looked at, as we were closing out this year, some projects that the facilities want to finish that LED, and we're also going to, those of you that use the library and use the drive-up book drop, from the end set, that turn to get in line to get your book dropped in there, especially if you drive a large truck, which many people do, they can't do it without mainly backing up. So they're going to cut that. And that's not a lot, but my point is that's what we try to see what we can do with some of the funding. However, right now as we're finishing, the water is over because they had discovered a huge leak out at the road. And so as much extra money we thought we would have, we had to offset the negative on the water bill. But my point is next year that should also be a savings as far as electricity with the LEDs. I don't know if you have any other specific questions about the budget.
Questions, anyone? Mike?
Yeah, I just was getting clarification on the drive-through. We're going to do away with that, or we're going to remodel that?
Yeah, remodel it.
Okay.
Cut the curb.
Cut the curb.
On your right as you're going through there, because it's just not.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, 100%. Okay.
Good. Any other questions?
It's used, Casey opened the drive-up window. We hadn't had that for picking up your holds. And how many average about now?
Right now, we're about 5 a day.
They open between 10 and 2. And that has picked up from when it started. So that was 6 years in the making, and Casey made that happen. I had one employee that I said, if you do this really well, you could probably go and get a job as a teller at the bank now because you know how to work that thing to push it out. She said, I'd rather stay here.
Okay, good. Any other questions?
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you and your staff for being a point of pride in Prescott Valley.
We still get the wow.
I know.
We have this geocache. I don't know if you're aware of it, but geocache is in the library, one of the things, and we get people. Last week we had people from Canada and from southern Arizona. I always email Larry and Ryan to say they're spending money here, but the wow factor is just amazing. So thank you.
Your staff is part of the wow factor, sir.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll move on then to number E, Community Development, Richard Parker, page 6-66.
Not wanting to break with tradition, I'm intending to go line by line through the budget this evening, and when I conclude, you'll be way off schedule. But with that in mind, we listed a number of accomplishments that have been achieved. I'm really pleased to again reinforce we're not at a point where we're declining any longer in permit activity, and that means that revenues that come in better offset, and at some point in time, though Bill won't tell you, those revenues will actually exceed the expenditures of the Community Development Department. So hopefully we're back to good times. As Larry pointed out, we see an upward trend, hit 50 residential starts this month, and we believe that will continue. That's the basis that we've asked for one additional staff person when needed. If it's not needed, we're not going to activate that position. We'll roll it into next year. There is a time frame to train up an individual to the customer service mantra that we have, and that is something that we would want to take into consideration. A variety of things that we're proposing to do really are a continuation of the services that we provided. I'm glad to see that we're not going to be undertaking the mid-decadal census, but what will go with that is work with the Department of Administration. Larry keeps calling it DES, but the Department of Administration to come up with a criteria that will be used to verify the estimates. As Larry pointed out, the estimates for Prescott Valley, from my view, in looking at completions as well as a lesser vacancy rate, puts the population of approximately 44.5 to 45.5. And that's a far cry from the estimates that were provided by the Department of Administration. A couple things that we were also successful in doing, again, with your approval, we've made application for funding, grant funding from FEMA. We've joined with the fire departments locally. Chino Valley, Yavapai County, and now Dewey Humboldt has elected to participate to potentially move forward on one system for software administration for all of the land-based planning and permitting. Why is that valuable to the fire department? Because they go into burning buildings, and they would be able to access information that we maintain in the Community Development Department for commercial buildings. Cops could use it as well, and develop fire action plans and be able to pull those up on or en route to an incident. The spin-off for us is also an improved interface with our customer. We would have web portal permit applications, so somebody in Phoenix or any place that has a internet access could access our systems, interface with us, and ultimately receive authorization to build buildings and do that kind of stuff in the town of Prescott Valley. That is a grant that is over a 2-year period of time. After that, it's something that is funded through a subscription process. At some point, when successful, if we get that grant, we'll be coming to you and talking to you about a technology fee. Yavapai County currently assesses a technology fee or a microfilm fee on every permit that they issue within their department. We would endeavor to establish that same fee, and then we would archive those documents. So that would be the way we would anticipate perpetuating those dollars. We were successful in our housing program this last year, accrued a little over $225,000 to the town. The value of that is not only to the citizenry, but to the bottom line for the administration of that program. We get 10%. We're confident that we'll get that grant awarded just after the fiscal year, and we will serve up to another 12 persons in the town of Prescott Valley. I usually close, and I intend to do so today, by answering any of your questions, but something that I always revel in is the process here is predictable. That is the planning and building process. People come in, they understand the outcome if they stimulate the process correctly. Likewise, you've got planning documents and good leadership in the Planning and Zoning Commission to where a developer can propose to invest their capital resources, and there is a strong probability that the outcome will be as what he is or she is intending. And there's not a lot of jurisdictions that can say that. There are other jurisdictions in the Quad Cities that are trying to emulate what we do here in Prescott Valley, because we've been very successful in bringing people in, and with Norm's help and Public Works, getting them through the process in very short order. We have another fast food operation that you've heard rumor of. They contacted us on early morning on a Friday morning. They received a phone call from me very early in the morning. They were in the process the next Tuesday, and he was aghast that it wasn't 6 or 8 months to get through a planning review. It was days. So that changed their perspective completely. I do also appreciate when I say predictable. This process is very predictable. We're given great direction from you and the manager as to what dollar figures we need to hit, and we endeavor to hit that dollar figure. I've worked in other jurisdictions that is definitely not the case. And if you read the paper, there's other jurisdictions that are in the process, and it seems to be grueling, having done that in my past. With that, I would respond to any questions you may have, again, concluding by saying things are looking up, and it's nice to see that Bill's finally listening to my budget projections and the projections of building permit activity this year.
He really isn't, but are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate that. Okay, we move on then to F, Parks and Recreation, page 695. Brian, you're up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Our 2015-16 Parks and Recreation budget will equate to about $2.1 million in its request. This will be divided amongst personnel, operations, and capital outlay. 54% of this total budget will be placed in personnel. As Bill alluded to this evening, we're very excited about the opportunity to bring on 2 additional staff members. This will put us within about 4 of our 2006 numbers that we had. Out of that amount in personnel, 53% will be found in parks, 42% in the office, recreation, and exempt staff, and 10% in aquatics, the remaining 5 divided amongst the remaining divisions. The 2 elements occurring within the fiscal year predominantly, again, are the 2 new personnel, but also within our aquatics division with the increase in minimum wage, as also with the competitive rate growth that needs to occur for our aquatic staff. We'll find those elements rising for us in this year. In our operations, this is 36% of our budget. Of that total, 29% is in water, 15% in electric, 5% in chemicals, and then the remaining 48% is placed into our daily maintenance and operations. In capital, which is 10% of our budget, our aquatics division will find a pool filtration pump, ice machine. Arts and culture with sculpture opportunities. Our park maintenance will hopefully see the transference of right-of-way acquisition for Glassford Hill, resurfacing of outdoor courts, improvements to our multi-use paths in Mountain Valley Park, a maintenance service vehicle, pallet storage system, and then used vehicles from the ADOT auction. In athletics, the Mountain Valley Park scoreboards and sound system will be improved at the amphitheater. Additional highlights in this year's budget will include improvements to the Civic Center Amphitheater, also known as Theater on the Green, and this will include the additions of a permanent public address system. We also hope to procure a movie system that will include a screen, projector, and sound system, a new playground for Antelope Park, and Phase 1 development of the Bob Edwards Park located at the intersection of North Viewpoint Drive and East Longlook. Phase 2 development is being proposed for fiscal year 16-17. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on our department fiscal request.
Questions, anyone? Marty?
Okay. I just have one quick question. In the future, do you see us possibly putting in any handball courts in any of the parks?
For you, no.
How about pickleball?
Pickleball is definitely a trending situation. Pickleball is played traditionally on tennis courts, so you can multitask that process. Currently within the town of Prescott Valley's parks and recreation system, we do not have those tennis courts. A large development of those have been the public access courts at Bradshaw Mountain High School, and then also within our HOA developments.
Pickleball is out. Anything else, Laura?
I just want to say how good it is to hear the statement, Theater on the Green.
Yes, ma'am.
And Limitless looks wonderful.
Thank you. It's very nice. We'll be
It
having
really looks good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So do the parks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Okay, next we'll move on. Magistrate, page 646-141, Judge Carson.
Good evening. Probably the only real thing I wanted to say and then answer any questions you may have is now that the court's caseload is much less than it was, we were up to 30,000 filings at one time. We're at right about 7,000 filings now. We've been able to focus on collections. We have a lot of cases that needed the direction of collections. We're actually doing that and doing it very well. There's two kind of aspects to that. One is we're able to get addresses, current addresses of people due to a state program that we have joined in. We can contact and get everybody's address now, it seems. The other thing is from income tax, state income tax, not federal, but we can put in a claim through there, and then if anybody gets a refund, we're able to collect on their refund. Both of those have been rather substantial, and literally today I had somebody in on an order to show cause why you're not paying. Do I have to put you in jail to get your attention to pay from a case from 2000? So our efforts to concentrate on that, because we literally have the time to do it now, has really worked well. With the state income tax collections, we got about $10,000 just earlier this month or the end of last month. It was just unbelievable. So, are there any other aspects of the court you might have questions, the budget, or anything?
Questions, anyone? Judge? It looks pretty good. You got things under control.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay, we'll move on then to Public Works and HURF, page 6150 and 7-9. Norm?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. It's a pleasure to present tonight the Public Works budget, which of course will include streets, facilities, and the graphic information system, the GIS. Those are the major departments that I'll present tonight. To first start out with, I think the real backbone of the department I have the pleasure of leading is our personnel. Very pleased this year that we did add one position is proposed in streets, which what we've chosen to do with that is actually what we call a ladder. We've rewritten every job description in the streets department, which added some different tiers and various job descriptions for types of technical achievements they have in order to make the positions different. I'm not saying that right. Very simply, when you get more qualified operators, they have what's called a commercial driver's license from labor. We've added a new position in between our current maintenance techs that's called a maintenance worker that requires a CDL. It would be very similar to like a maintenance worker 1, 2, 3, but we've been calling them different in that it does require labor, CDL, more qualified operators. They have a ladder to be put into place. So actually last year we put into a senior maintenance tech position, and we're moving forward with promotion from within, internal to the town-wide, if other departments would want to take advantage of those positions. But very happy we're going to be able to put that into place this next budget year and deal with some of that compression we've had during some of the downturn. Do have the pleasure of some longevity and very skilled people in the streets department, and it's nice to see them promoted from within and assume those higher job duties with some of those descriptions. As usual, streets maintenance is always a concern of mine. We will continue to advocate at the state level. I think I've talked plenty about some of the funding levels and diversion of existing funding sources in the HURF fund, but we'll continue to advocate there. One high hope we have in this upcoming 15-16 budget is that we are going to have $1 full million in chip seal. That's an increase of around $600,000 from this current budget year. That will help catch us up on some of that backlog of maintenance. Talked about the maintenance cycle. In fact, we took bids here Monday. We're going to talk about the chip seal at next May 7th work study to talk about next year's program like we typically have in place. So that extra funding will help catch us our maintenance cycle because we've talked about we have about a 9-year maintenance cycle, and we really like to whittle that down to a better cycle, which you're looking at 5 to 7 years is really optimum to maintain your streets. But funding is always a concern. Likewise, our maintenance budget, we continue to spend that out fully. I think you've seen some of the streets effort with some of the crack seal we're doing in advance of chip seal, shoulder patching. All that costs money. That in the neighborhood of about $400,000 a year. We continue to maintain our streets of just miscellaneous maintenance, striping, sweeping, and the like. So we'll continue to do that in this next year's budget. Have some hope for some capital in streets. Looking at a new 10-wheeler that's going to be snow-equipped. That replaces one of our, we've got two 20-year-old 10-wheelers, and that will replace one of those. We have good hope to get that into the fleet, which will help some of that response during snow time. And it'll be an everyday worker because obviously a 10-wheeler is adaptable to haul materials for street maintenance and like. So looking forward to having that reliable piece of equipment to help with our street maintenance. Likewise, we have gone out already and talked to our existing annual contracts providers. Some of those highlights, the landscaping, the sweeping, the striping, janitorial. I think council is well aware of those outsourced projects. We've, by outsourced vendor, we have talked to each one of those individuals. They really appreciate their long-term relationship with the town and the staff here. So they've all basically planned to renew at 0% increase. I think even with some of the particular increases we see out in the marketplace, they really value the relationship they have, know what's expected of them. They don't have as much overhead and marketing and the like. They just go get the job done and do a great job for the town. And keep in mind, those are the specialists that take care of the landscaping. And once again, some of the sweeping and striping, you might have noticed they did some striping today. We don't have to keep that piece of equipment in our inventory. They come do it about 3 weeks a year. So very hopeful that we can renew all those long-standing relationships at 0%. We'll bring that to you in June so we can roll that again January 1st. Moving on to facilities, you heard some of the success we've had with some of the LED lighting we've looked into, so we've continued to have some of those small programs in place. I think our biggest focus on facilities again this year, we get a lot of patron use, especially in this particular building with the library, and we'll want to maintain that high service level and really the very high maintenance level we maintain in our buildings here for our 3 buildings between Civic Center and also the police buildings. So we'll continue that effort. Always have little in-house projects that we do in facilities, and they will continue that particular endeavor. As far as GIS, one thing we've been real happy about, we did have a grant source through the flood control district and the office out of Oakland for FEMA that we're actually tuning up our flood control mappings. We're about halfway through that. We get to be, not the direct lead on that, the flood control district is at Yavapai County, but the nice thing is, council may be aware, we've come and presented some of the new federal requirements about insurance requirements. Well, we're getting all our mappings updated, and I think we'll see lots of benefit from updated mappings from that current study. So our GIS department is working with that particular effort to deliver those maps, and I think it'll save residents a lot of headaches about some of the new requirements of what's being put into place with some of the insurance that FEMA has. That's with GIS. I'd like to move on. Of course, Kim will present capital projects tomorrow, but would like to talk about some of the highlights we've worked hard on. This is really going to be a big construction year. Did quite a bit of design this current year, but we're excited. Some of our projects that are going out, and I think one of the first ones you'll see is the Lakeshore Roundabout. Really looking forward to that particular project. Have about 90% plans. That'll be about a $2 million effort, and we're going to have some artwork in the middle of that roundabout that we've got some great concepts we're going to present for the artwork. But we might let the arts and culture do a little bit too. Just seeing if you're listening. Viewpoint spouse intersection. That's one that we wanted to deliver this year, but with the FEMA floodplain study, we decided to do a little more study and put the brakes on that project timeline a little bit. And actually, it really was fruitful for us because we actually got some of the FEMA floodplain mapping redone for that viewpoint corridor. That's also a big floodplain corridor. So we adjusted the design a little bit and actually got a better design to move forward this year. That's about $3.5 million to do that intersection and quite a bit of flood control alterations there and actually to put that channel in place. So I think you've seen some preliminary stuff. Likewise, to take off upon that, we do have, as usual, grant funding from the flood control district anticipated, if all goes well. And actually, that'll be a similar project in the same area in that viewpoint corridor that will move forward with some floodplain improvements. So that'll be some channelization of that floodplain and channelizing existing floodplain in some future roadways. And the other one that we're currently scoping is with our development impact fees. I think council may be aware we've got done with that particular study, I think, this past fall, finalized. But with all of the growth that Richard Parker is anticipating, those development impact fees that are being collected, we plan on taking a look at widening the intersection at Long Look and Glassford Hill Road. Got about $1.5 million. That's really neat. I think we're seeing the congestions in the morning. That'll be a very popular project, basically moving the poles out and adding some of that laneage that will, I think, really open that intersection and help traffic movement. So really think that's one of the bigger priorities that we'd like to move forward with.
And that also includes the left-hand turn lane into Granville off of Glassford Hill Road at Tuscany.
Good.
That's a good point. That's
going to make a lot of people happy.
That's what I was just going to say. Boy, I feel like they are just going to be ecstatic.
We're seeing, and obviously we're seeing quite a bit of growth in the west side of the Granville subdivision, and some of those particular improvements, I think we'll really see some benefit from those widenings. So we're looking forward to that design process and figuring out what we're going to do there. Some other funding sources I think are very popular that didn't make the budget book, but I think are very noteworthy. Talked about the FEMA floodplain mapping project. That's about a $100,000 effort that particularly we don't even have any match for. We've done so much effort in the past with some of our mappings. We were able to have in-kind matching kind with some contributions that we've, some of the data we gave them, they counted as a contribution towards the effort. So it was really about a $200,000 effort, and we were able to capitalize on some of our past efforts towards that mapping. So we're real pleased with that. We anticipate we'll probably have delivery probably this fall with some of those maps and some of the processing there. Likewise, the ADOT sign replacement project, we're looking forward to getting started here in May. That's a phase 2. Looking forward to a phase 3 probably in the spring or next year, but that's getting ready to be kicked off here in May, so it'll cross over the budget years. There's no match requirement. That's highway safety improvement funding that doesn't have the typical 5% match, but once again, that's about a $500,000 infusion in our sign project. We're already seeing a lot of the benefits of replacing the stop signs and yields. As we talked with council, these are the yellow regulatory signs, and we'll see that moving forward over the next couple months. Another $500,000 infusion. One of the ones that's noteworthy is the PV Pipeline Central Core. I have talked about that one for quite a while. With confidence, again, I would anticipate we're going to get started this fall through that federal process, and that's about a $1.5 million construction effort. ADOT will administer it, We've brought some of the intergovernmental agreements to council in the past, and we will hopefully move forward with ADOT leading that particular construction effort. And that'll be a real nice amenity for some of that transportation we talk about in public works that is non-vehicular. It'll be a real nice amenity that we hope to put in place this fall and get that done. The other one, transportation related, is the effort that's currently out is the transit district property tax. Council may be aware that we're going to take a look through some of the funding that we get through CYMPO to take a look at a consultant, taking a look at drawing a district boundary tax, really looking for a lot of public involvement in that study to see if there's an appetite out there to start a transit system. We have the 2009 implementation plan that talked about a bus system. We've talked regionally, no one really wanted to move forward except Prescott Valley. So we're looking at that property tax, drawing a district, identifying a service, and taking that to a vote in 2016. So those particular requests for proposals are due on Monday, and I'd like to bring that to council. We know a little more who the consultant is and some of the scope, talk about some of that timeline that the consultant sets up for that study. That's kind of public works. That's a lot of the highlights, staffing, and some of our capital projects. In addition, some of the other projects we react with regionally with some of our other member transportation agencies, ADOT and CYMPO. With this, any questions I can answer?
I do. Norm, on page 154, item 4312, the building repairs, youth and family services, is that the Boys and Girls Club building? I'm just trying to figure out what that is. It's just a curiosity question.
Bill, give me some help there on that particular line item. Boys and Girls Club.
Is that, okay. And then my other question has to do about that roundabout. Several members of the arts and culture have approached me and told me they don't have any details. Are you far enough along in your planning to share details with them so they understand the scope of the art that they should be looking for?
Yes, we have. Here about a month ago, we did, from Dave & Associates, got a rendering of actually what the size of the space they can work with. Worked with Brian Whitty with Parks, because he said that's really what the artists need, is know what that scope of the area they can work with. So what we wanted to do was we gave them some of those limitations of not only the size of the particular area, but also that we found by experience you always want to have a, I hate to call it a crash wall, but
you do.
It is a crash wall.
Call it a safety wall.
Yeah, and what that does is it sets some of the parameters. So I know talking with Brian, he had enough information about some of that scope that he could take it to the arts people, and I understand that's when they need to look not only at what particular hard artwork, but even landscaping improvements. So that is in play, and they should have had the information. And I understand there's a long process to scope and see what comes out of the effort of the artists.
That's why they want as much lead time as possible, so that's why I was asking the question.
And that should be in their hands, and that should be in the process now. So we're looking forward to seeing what they come up with, because I think there's lots of opportunity for something there.
And you gave that to Brian, right?
Correct, yes. I understood, yes, he's already been to his commission, and they're in the process.
3 weeks ago.
Okay. If you'd like, I could follow up with any individual. I'll follow up with Brian again and see what the process is. But
any other questions? Mike?
Yeah, I just had a comment. I just wanted to let you know I think we're pleased with the additional monies we're able to assign to the chip seal by what you said, $400,000, because I know we've had some input. In fact, I did today, and I think that'll change a lot of the perspective regarding the needs of our roadways. So.
Actually, it's an additional $600,000.
$600,000.
Yeah, we had $400,000 this year's
okay.
budget, but
even
even millions. So we're looking forward to that increased maintenance effort. Absolutely.
Yes, and if you will recall, that was one of your high priorities from our retreats, was do what you can with what you've got as it relates to street maintenance, and Norm's done that.
Laura?
Well, we have more money than we thought we would have, so.
Any other comments, questions?
Looking forward to a good year, Mayor.
Keep it up.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then to I. Management Services, page 645. William Calpe, Management Service Director. Bill, you're up.
Thank you. I want primarily focus on Chapter 6, page 43. It's kind of the summary page. If there's any specifics within the details, I'll be more than happy to answer the questions. But on just the summary page, you can see my personnel is staying the same. No change from the current year to next year. I'd have to compliment my 3 managers that I have. Casey, I don't know, he's been here. I don't know how long he's been here, but he's been here, it seems like forever. But my 2 new managers, Mark, who we met last weekend, and Katie, they've made the transition, and they're just doing a great job in finance and utilities. So I really appreciate all their hard work that they do. The total budget this year in 14-15, I had $2,071,000, and now my budget for 15 and 16 is going to be $2,086,000. So I'm only going up $15,000. I think Larry owes me some money, because he cut me in here, and look at it. Look how far down below my budget I should be. But there's a couple reasons actually for that. One is in the current year budget, Casey had $25,000 budgeted for the website design. That's pretty much done. That'll be up and running here hopefully within the next few weeks. So I didn't roll that money into next year's budget, so obviously there's one of the major components of the decrease in my operating budget. The other part is we've kind of gone to this focus of what each division needs to basically manage their department or their division. And Casey always had some software maintenance line items that he was paying for that were for town-wide. It wasn't just for him, but they were town-wide. So that was approximately $38,000 that's incorporated into his 14-15 budget, but we moved to non-departmental. So if you look at non-departmental this year, you're going to see a lot more money for software maintenance than you've ever seen before. And what we've done is that we've taken all basically software maintenance that covers more than one department, and we moved it to non-departmental. One of the items is like the HR application, Performance Pro. We use that basically right now, was in Karen's budget. Now it's down in maintenance, or in the non-departmental and software maintenance. So we've taken a lot of those items and moved it into non-departmental. So that's the other reason for the big increase. Even with those, I was still well below the 3% goal that my town manager gave me. So I still think he owes me a few more bucks to go into my budget.
Larry, your comments?
I think we should applaud him. We got to make him feel good.
Other than that, capital, our only capital purchases, which you can see the detail on the next page, and chapter 6, page 44, is basically Casey. Casey's buying more IT equipment and phones and things like that. We have a new backup. We were having problems actually with our backup system. We were running into situations where the backup would not complete by the time by a certain time. And so basically we actually had a situation where we got a virus on one of our computers, basically wiped out most of their hard drives. We went to try to back it up with the previous night's backup, and we found out that the backup basically terminated before it was supposed to, because there was an issue with the file sizes and everything. So as a result, we're going to add a better backup system, the server and that, so it will allow us to basically make sure that all computers within the organization are backed up on a regular basis. So if we ever have a problem, we know we can always go back and restore it to a certain day.
Is that why it's called a Barracuda backup?
Yeah, it's going to. Yes, it is. So other than that, those are the main components of my budget. We do have the auditing fees in here that were just approved by council the other day, or last week. So those have been incorporated into the budget. So, those are the main highlights of my budget. So if there's any specific questions that you'd like.
Questions, anyone? Comments? Keep your doors and curs in line.
You bet. Always do.
Good. Okay, thank you, Bill. Okay, move on to J, Town Clerk, page 6-34. Diane, you're up.
Honorable Mayor and Council, this is not going to take long at all. I think I have the smallest budget within the whole town. So, we have stayed below the allotted 3% increase, and you can see that I have shifted a little bit of money around where I could to make some different focus areas in the department, if you will, and in preparation for from other things. You'll notice that the biggest cost that I have in there is on the software, hardware maintenance for the Granicus system, and that's almost $19,000. And I just found out, much like you, that most of those costs have been shifted over to non-departmental, but nobody told me that. Sorry, he says. This time every year I get a surprise with Bill.
You do that intentionally.
I know that. It's intentional. So you can see a few dollars here, a few dollars there, just been shifted around. One thing we do have to purchase this year in the way of minor equipment under $3 is a new records management scanner for the records center. Our other one is getting pretty darn tired, as you can imagine, since we've taken that huge step to go electronic. We're working the heck out of that little scanner. So we're thinking it's probably about time to look at a new one. Other than that, my fees are pretty much the same as what they have been. I intend to drive the little Ford Taurus a little bit less this year. I took $100 out of gas so I could apply it somewhere else. So I guess Facilities Public Works isn't going to be snagging that $100. So that's it. Unless you have any questions about any of these dollar figures down here, I don't have a whole lot that I can tell you about. We do have some big plans coming up in the next few years, but you're going to have to wait another week or so to find out what those are.
Good. Any questions? Anyone? And it sounds like, Larry, anything in your defense?
No questions. Diane has done a great job, as have all the department heads this evening. But I did notice that your new lieutenant, Scott Stebbins, walked in, and just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that.
Scott, you're up.
20 minutes. 20 minutes and use the microphone.
Okay. There's no more departments to look at tonight, so unless someone has some other questions.
Mr. Mayor, I just had a comment.
Okay.
Just the fact that we've seen some increases primarily in library and parks and rec, and I think that's by design, because I think the council felt they would like to bring back to at least prior to the recession what the library and the Parks and Recs departments were. And I think we've made great strides in doing that, and look forward again, I think, tomorrow to hear about the police department, which was our other area, I think, of focus in terms of trying to recover from the recession and some of the cuts that we had to make. So I think I'm very happy to see the budget and the state it's in right now, and look forward to tomorrow as well.
Well, we meet tomorrow at the same time, same station. Meeting is adjourned.